My name is Dawn Garcia, and my fellowship year was 1992.
My name is Jim Risser, and my fellowship year was 1974.
My name is Jim Bettinger. My fellowship year was 1983.
Well, great. This is such a wonderful opportunity to have the three most recent directors of the Night Fellowships program here together at the 10th reunion of our fellows here at Stanford. And looking forward to this, just a fun conversation, because all of us love and have led this program in different eras. Well, Jim R., you're the person who was the earliest tenure as director. When you decided to become a director and move from journalism in a newsroom into being a director, why did you do that? What was of interest to you to run the fellowship?
Well, I thought that the fellowship had actually directly helped me quite a lot in my progression in the business after I'd had my fellowship at Stanford and went back to work and was quite successful after that, won a number of awards and just did other things that seemed useful. And I got to thinking what impact the fellowship that year had had on me and how I would like to participate in spreading it to other people. That's really what happened, I think. It changed my life, just like today. And at this reunion, we're hearing people say that Jim and I and you have changed their lives.
How about you, Jim B.? How did the fellowship change your life?
Well, I too came back as director.
I see a theme here.
Some of it was personal and some of it was professional. The personal was quite important, which is I realized about halfway through my fellowship year that I could play with the big kids, which was an enormous step for me. Professionally, it made me understand several things. One was that simplifying stories was not always the same as clarifying them, and to realize that there was some beauty in complication to much of what we were reporting on. A second thing was that in order to do more good stories, you have to do fewer bad stories. And a third thing, this is professional and personal, was made me way more attuned to international journalism. I had never been around international journalists before. So let me turn it back on you, Don Garcia. How did the fellowship change you?
It was one of the most important things in my life, no question. So I was a reporter. I love being a reporter. I was a reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle, and I wanted to be a foreign correspondent in Mexico, and I was trying to convince the Chronicle to have a foreign correspondent in Mexico, which they didn't have, and I had the persistent person that I am. I'd given them three tries at a proposal, and they kept saying no. And I thought, what if I go to Stanford and do this night fellowship thing I've heard about, and I'm going to study U.S.-Mexico relations, focusing on immigration, which is what I was really interested in covering. And I'll come back with a lot of ideas and more knowledge, and then I'm going to try again and see if they'll send me to Mexico. And so I came to the fellowship with the dream of being a foreign correspondent in my head and took wonderful class seminar on the relationship between Mexico and the United States. And, I began that path, and then something happened. It doesn't happen all at once, and it's the case for most fellows. I, little by little, started to think about other things that I might want to do. And I was so influenced by, we had great editors in my class, and I had actually not had a lot of great editors, so I was impressed. Stanford is just mind-blowing experience and open up your mind to the possibilities, to think bigger. And the confidence, you said to play with the big boys. For me, it was like, wow, I'm in this room with really smart people, and I'm in here. I start to believe I belong here. And I started thinking more and more about leadership. We talked about leadership in our newsrooms, and I realized I had kind of been doing some leadership without title. And the opportunity came at the end of the year for me to take on a leadership role at the San Jose Mercury News. So I jumped into it, and from being a reporter, not ever thinking I would go into being an editor and in leading a newsroom. So that was a huge impact, and it changed the whole path of my career. I want to know what makes you hopeful for the future of journalism.
the quality of people who go into journalism and are serious about it is still very high and maybe better in some ways than some news organizations that are not what we have regarded as traditional, like things like Politico. The fact that organizations like that exist and find ways to do journalism a little differently makes me hopeful, because that's a relatively new phenomenon, I think.
I'm going to quote Marty Barron. I'm optimistic because there's no reasonable alternative. Otherwise, you just quit coming to work. But also, I'm optimistic because the urge to do journalism keeps coming along, and it's kind of like water. It finds its own way. And I don't know what the future. Believe me, I really don't know what the future is. But I have to have confidence and hope in that, and that the fact that the journalism that the three of us kind of grew up in and worked in is so debilitated, doesn't keep good journalism from being done. And so this urge to do good journalism, which is like finding facts, assembling them, and distributing them in ways that are useful to people, continues. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, I am optimistic for journalism, the future of journalism, because of the resilience and creativity of people who come through our program, who are finding ways to do great journalism with new models. They love being able to help provide information for people who need it. They see this need and want to fill it. And it's in communities of color, it's in investigative, it's in geographic areas that are news deserts. And I'm always amazed, really. I think every year you see people doing things you thought, well, I never thought about that idea. That's fantastic. And what's makes me even more optimistic is the network and collaboration of those kind of people. It's building to a way that we have never seen before. Nonprofit news, new models, and that is going to be slowly replacing some of the real old school news organizations that are just not going to make it, sadly, and ones we work for. So I'm optimistic about the future of journalism.